Welcome, Tim and Kelly Kurkjian to Talks to Go. Tim, believe it or not, just like you, baseball has been a significant part of my life. And why do I say that? For 14 years, I was the public address announcer for an independent baseball club in northern New Jersey called the New Jersey Jackals, who, who up until a couple of years ago played at Yogi Berra Stadium on the campus of Montclair State University in Little Falls. Yeah. And in fact, Jill, I'm going to say almost literally grew up at the stadium. Why do I say that? Because from the time she was little, and I mean little, I would bring her into the press box in her car seat. That's how young she was when she first started coming up to the stadium. A couple of years later, she and a friend of hers sang the national anthem at one of the Jackals games. And then a couple of years after that, she and I actually slept on the outfield grass, pitched a tent as part of a dad-daughter overnight promotion. Yeah. So, like I said, she grew up at the Yog, as I like to say. So, without a doubt, baseball was and continues to be a glue that bonds the two of us. So, as one of the country's preeminent baseball writers, analysts, commentators, Tim, what role has the game played in your relationship with Kelly?
Well, Kelly, Kelly loved baseball as a kid. She couldn't help it growing up in our house because I only know about three things in the world: baseball, basketball, and sitcoms from the 60s. So there was no doubt she was going to get involved, whether she wanted to be or not. And I remember taking her to a game when she was about 5 years old, major league game, and taught her how to keep score. We went to a bunch of games after that, and Kelly always looked at me to make sure that we had a scorecard so she could keep score at a baseball game. That's where it all started with Kelly and I.
Oh, yeah. So Kelly, obviously the world knows your dad as, a world-class baseball writer, but how would you describe him to people who don't know him?
Um, okay, so I think this could be like a super long-winded answer, but
That's okay.
We've got
I can keep
plenty
it
of
short.
Kelly, we've got plenty of time. Take as
Yeah.
much time as you'd like.
I will say, first of all, I'm a very emotional being, and talking about my dad can make me very emotional. So if I come to tears at some point in this conversation, that's okay. Okay, so I think everybody knows my dad as like, Mr. Baseball, and that's how we knew him too growing up. But I think I know him more as like a very, very great family man. The best thing about dad is he wants to help at all times. So whenever we have big family functions, dad is the one who's at home cooking for 20. He is the chef. He has everyone staying at his house. He makes sure that everything is ready for the big trip. He makes sure that everybody's going to sleep over at his house, and he's making breakfast. It's going to be chocolate chip pancakes. It's going to be poppy seed muffins when all my friends sleep over. So it's more of like, I view him as he takes care of everyone, and me and my family, and my mom, Kathy, his wife. That's what I view my dad as the caretaker of our family.
Right. And I got this from my mother and father who taught us how to do this. But I went I went on all the field trips when Kelly was
Yeah.
a little kid. Fifth grade, we went to Ferguson Farm with Mr. Andrews,
Mhm.
and Kelly is milking a cow at Ferguson Farm. And she looks at me and says, "Dad, you got to get down here and milk this cow. Like, I have zero interest in milking a cow, but since your fifth grade daughter says you got to be a part of this, then that's the way it works. You
Yeah.
got to be a part of it." That's what I've always tried to do, is be a part of their lives in every way, including in baseball. But famously, Kelly was like 13 years old, and she looked at me and said, "Dad, no offense, but I don't really love baseball." So I said, "Honey, it's okay." She was a soccer player. She was a basketball player. She's a great artist. You don't have to be a baseball player. Although I will tell you, Kelly was a really good softball player on the junior high school team. And we played a game at John Baker Middle School, and Kelly's in like the seventh grade. And my dad, who was a really good player, and my two brothers, who were in the Baseball Hall of Fame at Catholic University, were there, and we're watching Kelly's game. And she has the best game she's ever had because as I asked her later, like, what happened today? That's the best you've ever played. And she said, well, all you guys were there to watch. I couldn't let you down. That's when we knew she had another level in there. She just didn't even know she had it.
Well, you know, like middle school softball, there's like 5 games a year. And I
Right.
played 2 years. So my entire baseball career was like a total of 10 games, I think. But I think most of that was like, you know, baseball was everywhere in our house. So dad and I connected a little bit more where something that was like our own together was basketball because his baseball was his thing. He was really, really good at that. And he's very good at basketball too. I'm sure we're going to dive into that like majorly today. But we shared more of like basketball on our front together. Baseball, I loved it. We went to like countless, I can't even tell you how many games we went to growing up. Every spring break was going to spring training. It was either Florida or Arizona. And we were always at, you know, games through spring break. And we went all year round. We traveled everywhere. We've been to countless World Series and All-Star games. And so we did that big time. I just didn't get a hang of playing it as much. But I loved going, and I still love going, but I didn't get to play it as much.
Kelly, what position did you play?
I was like second
She
and
was a
short.
second baseman. She could play shortstop. She had a very good throwing arm, and I hit her 1,000 ground balls just to get her ready for her 10 games that she would play in junior high.
Yeah.
She had great hands. She's got great hand-eye coordination. So softball came relatively easy to her, but to repeat, she was better at soccer and she was better at basketball, much better in basketball.
I think unfortunately what happened with me and what happens with like a lot of people is you go to get a ground ball, it hits a rock and it smacks you in the face, or you get slammed with a line drive. And I was like, I'm sorry, that's not fun. I don't know. Like, I'd rather catch a basketball, you know? So, you know, I think things like that happened where I got a little bit nervous about playing and more enjoyed watching it instead.
Yeah.
Well, you know, as you're relating the story, it's frightening. And Jill and I are nodding our heads. It's frightening how your lives have mirrored ours. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One, this young woman who's sitting to my left, and I think she's to your right, she was also a second baseman. She played on the JV team in high school.
Yeah.
You know,
and freshman.
and freshman year. Yeah, yeah. And
Freshman team, I never made varsity.
Yeah,
So
Tim, you well know there are major league ball players who could fall out of bed and hit the hell out of the ball. That's Jill. Her eye-hand coordination was off the charts. She could hit like crazy. Fielding and running, not so great.
throwing,
But
absolutely
but
not.
here's the story. So she was, I think it was for a travel
It was
team.
literally the first practice of
First
the travel
practice
team.
for a local travel
Yeah.
team, and she was having a catch with one of her teammates. And I walked over to tell her, you know, I'd come back in about an hour or so to pick her up. Well, the young woman who was having the catch with her didn't notice that Jill and I were in a conversation, threw the ball. Jill turns around, and the ball literally hits her nose and breaks it.
Yep.
Yeah,
Broke my nose.
And then you're
Yep.
done.
Yep.
yeah,
That
yeah.
was it.
Honestly, I was kind of happy about it.
This is my out.
No,
Yes,
I was so happy about it. I like you, I was sort of like in and out of softball. I mean, if I could have DH'd in high school, I would have because I really did love hitting but the fielding and all of that and the throwing was never really my specialty. And I would have loved to just like sat on the bench during, you know, the half inning that we were in the field, but that's not really a thing in high school. So I also just didn't have like the best coaches. So there were a lot of factors at play that made me sort of fall out of love with softball and not really want to continue with it. But you know, I've always loved baseball, so I've stuck with that part, but softball not so much.
Yeah, the one thing I remember about one of her coaches, who she didn't go on to play for in high school, this guy would walk around with a Pepsi bottle, and he had a chaw, right? He had tobacco, and just, you know, into the Pepsi bottle. It was a very pleasant, obviously I'm being sarcastic,
Yes.
thing to watch. Yeah,
Girls
yeah,
coach.
Yes.
girls coach. Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
Correct. He would sort of like ask around who was an empty water bottle that he could like spit into.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was gnarly for sure. It was
Sorry.
lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, didn't love it so much. But yeah.
So Kelly was Kelly was a really good basketball player on rec league teams when she was 8, 9, 10 years old, and then she made the junior high school team, and then she got invited to try out for a travel team, like an elite team,
Mhm.
and she got cut from that team. So she's in the 7th grade. We're driving home after the game, and you remember what she said to me?
You can go ahead. I think I know.
She said, "Now, don't you tell me that I was great today, because I wasn't great today. All those girls were better than I was. When we get home, you're going to teach me how to shoot a left-handed layup, because I was the only one there that couldn't shoot a left-handed layup." And of course, we have a basket in our front yard. So we shot left-handed layups for about 10 minutes. And that's when I realized, poor Pop, that Kelly was ambidextrous. Her left hand was just as good as her right hand. She mastered a left-handed layup in 10 minutes, and that was really the start of Kelly becoming a really good basketball player. She got cut from a travel team and she was embarrassed, and then she challenged me again to make her better, and she got way better after
That
that.
was shortly after my transition from softball. I was like, all right, we're done here. Let's go focus on basketball now.
Tim, but besides that, the front yard tutelage of the left-handed layup, did you ever coach any of Kelly's teams?
Oh yeah, I was the coach of her team probably fifth, sixth, 7th grade. And then in high school, I was the summer league coach for her high school team. So I was in charge of getting the high school team together to be ready to play on November 15th when the real season started. So that was the highlight of my entire, not just coaching career, but maybe my favorite time of all time with Kelly was I was her basketball coach for 10 years. And we used to rent the gym at Quince Orchard High School, where Kelly met in high school. I would rent it for the summer, and we would play 2 nights a week, and we would just go in and play. We weren't practicing, we weren't teaching, we were just playing. And all the girls from her team played. I played in the games with them. I look back, and those were my greatest days, was my connection to Kelly in basketball.
Dad was very good. So part of he ran the floor when he played with us and when we were in high school. And there's always things like, oh, you play basketball, right? Like, he's very good. And it was fast, and was a point guard and could shoot and is a point guard. You are still a point guard. And was super, super good. So I always kind of laughed about this, because he would have it was kind of like a selective group sometimes, where he'd be like, okay, in the summers, I'm inviting these people. And then he would go to the boys varsity team and say, I'm inviting these people. So it was a mix of the boys and the girls teams. And it was like the best that he wanted to play with that night. And so these guys would come, and they were like 6'3", and Dad would smash. And I'm like, he's doing this so he can go in and just smash us all. And through to these varsity boys who were also very good at the time. Like, the high school guys in my time were pretty good, if I remember. But it was awesome, because it was like a really, really high level game of ages. I don't remember how old you were, low 50s or something, down to at the time I was probably 17. And we just played really hard for 2 hours, scrimmaging each other, boys and girls mixed. It was so fun.
Right. And the best guy on the boys team was Kevin Kennedy, 6'3" shooter, went to play at Gettysburg. And Kelly gave him a little shake move, left hand to right hand, and he looked at her like, where did that come from? Like,
highlight of my life.
Right. It was really cool. But I brag way too much about Kelly, but her senior year in high school, she made 54 out of 56 free throws. Okay, wow. That's 96.4%. The school record for consecutive free throws made for a girl was 20. She broke the record twice within the same season. She made her first 32 free throws.
Wow.
Then she missed one, and then she made the next 21. And when she finally missed the one against Churchill, number 33. She looked over at me because I'm the scorekeeper for the varsity games. She looks over at me like, oh my God, I missed a free throw. What do I do now? She, of course, made the next one, but it was so Kelly's free throw shooting has been told every place I go. You're about the 1,000th person that I've told about my daughter's free throw shooting. But seriously, 54 out of 56, and she's 3 feet tall. It's impossible. When I went to visit at Syracuse, where she went, I get into a discussion with Jim Boeheim, who's the basketball coach at Syracuse. And I tell him, like, right off the bat, my daughter made 54 out of 56 her senior year. And he said, well, we need to put her on our team because we can't shoot free throws.
You guys, he will tell anyone. I swear, we dropped off my daughter at school this morning, and he told like her teacher that about my foul shooting. You did.
I did.
He'll tell anyone. So the best part, and I like give him this, but he talks about it a lot. But today I'll give you this because this is the format. But at his induction into the Hall of Fame a few years ago, like this is the biggest day of his life. And he's standing up there talking about his family. And somehow I come up and he tells at his induction about my free throws. And then Jason Stark at the end of when he sees him later is like, Tim, there was about a 100% chance that you were going to tell the world about your daughter's free throw shooting during your speech today.
Well, I'm not missing that. So Kelly didn't play in college. I think she could have played Division III. And she said, look, I don't want to play anymore. I need to be a student. I want to go to a big school. I want to be a part of things. And so she went to Syracuse. So her first game she played at Syracuse was a sorority basketball game, all right? And believe me, it doesn't get any lower than this. But poor dad, poor doting dad says, call me after the game. I need to know how the game went. So she calls me and she says, okay, we won. The final score was 20-16. I said, 20-16. How many points did you score? She said 20. She scored them all. And explain why you had to score them all.
Well, not everybody had played before. And you were teaching some people what defense was and what offense was. So like half the people there, were just there for the camaraderie, which is awesome and fun. And then, as a very competitive person going into this, you're like, oh my God, what are we doing? But it was still fun. It was still, right, for the most part.
And this is the last basketball story, I promise. Kelly and her husband, Mark, who was a really good high school basketball player, they played on a co-ed team at Syracuse where girls could not be guarded by the guys. So Kelly's like the best player on the court because she blows by her girl, and the guys aren't allowed to guard her. Whatever. Final score was 54-50. And Mark and Kelly combined for 50 points. Mark had 25, Kelly had 25, and they scored a total of 54. I used that story on the night that she and Mark got married. That was part of the father of the bride speech that I made, not to mention the 54 out of 56 free throws. So basketball has always joined us. Baseball, not as much.
Well, I'll give you guys one. I got a couple of basketball stories, but this one sticks out. And Tim, given the fact that you are a proud Terp from the University of Maryland, you will appreciate this. So I'm going to American University. So happens the Beach Boys were going to be in concert at Cole Fieldhouse. So I go over with a couple of my fraternity brothers to University of Maryland to buy the tickets. I'm in line at the box office at Cole. I get my tickets. I turn around and I'm staring into a belt buckle. I look up, and I continue to look up, and who is it? None other than Tom McMillan.
No way.
Yeah. In fact, I didn't think he had just signed to come to the University of Maryland to play. Yeah. True story.
So Tom McMillan was a senior in college when I was a senior in high school. So I never went to Maryland when Tom McMillan went there. I missed by 1 year.
Okay.
But his senior year, Maryland might have been the best team in the country, but they lost to NC State in the ACC finals 104-103. and they didn't even go to the NCAAs because they weren't allowed to. They chose not to go to the NIT. So yes, Tom McMillan's one of the greatest players in the history of the University of Maryland.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And they had some, I mean, I was there. I think Lefty Drizel was the coach while I was down there.
Yes, he
Yeah.
was famous. Yes,
Yeah.
I was a freshman and
Yeah.
Lefty was in his heyday at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, Tim, to paraphrase the great Vin Scully, if the improbable were possible, gonna ask you a question. Would you rather interview Babe Ruth or collaborate with Kelly on the redesign of the iconic MLB logo?
Well, I would love Babe Ruth's the one guy
You
I
can
would
tell it how it is,
I know.
Dad.
I would rather have dinner with Babe Ruth than with Abraham Lincoln, okay?
Okay.
Because Babe Ruth is the greatest baseball player of all time. There is not a close second for me, and I would love to just figure out who he was and how did he become so great in, over 100 years ago. But to answer your question, I would rather do anything with my children as long as there's a collaboration. My son Jeff and I have our own podcast,
Right.
and it's great because I'm doing it with my son, and we were so excited about today because I'm doing it with my daughter.
Yeah.
And yes, Kelly is a genius when it comes to artwork. She was the artist of the year her senior year at Quince Orchard High School, and she was the best player on the basketball team. And she laughs when I tell her this, but her artwork was set up in the gymnasium right underneath the basket. So the two places that she really, really was great at in high school were right there on senior night. She was Artist of the Year and Basketball Player of the Year. So, but I'd much rather do something artistic with Kelly than do anything by myself.
Dad's always had a little hard time, and I don't, we can poke fun of each other, really understanding like what it is I do though in life. So when I graduated college, I went and I worked in marketing for 10 years. And so I worked for brands like Kellogg's and SC Johnson, and did their marketing and their advertising and stuff. And some of that was like things that would be designed and go in the grocery store to like sell you cereal, right? Or like the movie promotions with the latest Kellogg's, right? So I did a lot of that stuff, but Dad really never quite understood what it was I did. So when people were like, what does your daughter do? He would be like, she's an artist. She could design the book cover of my next book. That would be like his answer to everything that like I do, as opposed to like, oh, she's in marketing and she does design for Kellogg's and blah, blah, blah. He's like, yeah, she's an artist who could design a book cover. I'm like, you are not wrong.
She's a starving
Not quite
artist.
what I do, but that's okay. But now you understand what I do, because
Right.
it's in my home, and like there's a better connection because he sees the design work every day. And
Right. And actually, my third book, Kelly looked at the jacket cover, the original one, and said, this isn't very good. They need to do this again. And they redid it on her suggestion, and it's way better. Look, the reason I don't understand what Kelly does is I have no artistic ability whatsoever. Her late grandmother was a professional artist. My wife, Kelly's mother, might as well be a professional artist. That's what Kelly is. That's how I always see her. And I was the worst at art ever. When I was a kid, my mother used to hang my artwork on the inside of the refrigerator. And I'm the worst Pictionary player in history.
Yeah.
And Kelly, when we used to play Pictionary, every once in a while, the worst picture that I made would go up on the refrigerator. Like, this is Dad's attempt to draw an airplane, because I didn't know how to do it. No ability whatsoever.
Yeah, that's all right, Dad.
Well, Kelly, I know exactly what you did because I started my business career in advertising. In fact, I helped introduce the world, believe it or not, to stovetop stuffing.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Get out of here.
Stovetop instead of potatoes. Absolutely. Yeah.
You're
Wow.
aging yourself.
Yeah. I know I'm dating myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
We're going way back. Way back.
Yeah.
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 I made meatloaf the other day, and at the request of a friend, I put stuffing in the meatloaf.
The stovetop brand.
Stovetop stuffing in the ground beef, and made a meatloaf, and it was great. So now I have another use for stovetop
Thank
stuffing.
you for stuffing.
There we go.
You are very welcome.
Yeah. Well, as my dad likes to say, turnabout is fair play. So For you, Kelly, would you rather design the wedding invitation for Selena Gomez and Benny Blanco or throw out the ceremonial first pitch with your dad at this year's All-Star game?
Oh gosh.
First off,
Okay,
who
I have
is
thoughts on this.
Selena Gomez and who?
Benny
Benny
Blanco,
Benny
Benny
Blanco,
Blanco. I
her
actually don't.
fiance, Tim, her
her
fiance.
fiance.
Yeah.
Now,
He's
if you're going
he's
to ask who Selena Gomez is, we've got a problem.
All right, all right,
Jesus.
I know. Yeah, I think I know.
Anyways.
Look, pop culture. I am the worst of all time. I've been to 3 concerts in my entire life, one of which was with her. All right, answer the question
Okay.
now that I've
Yeah.
established who's getting married.
Okay. My thoughts are I'd be like really intimidated to design her invitations. But I also know she probably have a really good budget, so you could do like a lot of good stuff.
for
That
sure.
but uh, getting to do something like that with my dad would be really, really special. I feel like we've gotten to do special things like that before. Not anything to that degree. I think I'd have to do Selena. I'm sorry. I think
Oh,
like yeah.
absolutely.
Whoa.
But
And
yeah,
you're going to make a lot of money. You're not going to make any money throwing out the first ball with me. That's
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. And I get a lot of I get a lot of showing for my business if I did that.
Right.
Get some
Totally.
growth out of that one. Mhm.
Totally.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, Tim, we touched on this, and I think you've answered it, but I'm going to go for it anyway. As great as your career has been, is there anything you would have changed or sacrificed to share a special moment with Kelly that you didn't have the opportunity to do?
Yeah, senior year, she scored 20 points against Richard Montgomery. She made 8 free throws down the stretch. It was the most points she scored in a high school game, and I missed it. I was in spring training. My brother Matt
Yes.
was calling me with like the play-by-play of the game. So I missed like 2 of her games in 4 years.
Mhm.
But one of them was when she got 20 against Richard Montgomery, and I wasn't there. So if I could do it all over again, I would have come home from spring training and watched her tear it up against Richard Montgomery.
I will say there's not much dad missed. So like he traveled a lot when we were growing up, but I have like no recollection of that because he was at everything. So like if we had a field trip, he was there and he was at every game. He took me to every single away soccer and basketball trip for the weekend. And that's where he's like an absolute master at this, like, okay, planning. So like this is something that's hysterical in life now that I live down the street from him. But like, okay, today I'm going to do this for 4 hours. Then I'm going to drive to Connecticut. It's going to take me 6 hours. I'm going to do my show for 2 hours. I'm going to drive home all night so I can take your son to school in the morning. So I'm now realizing in life, this is how he's lived his whole life, is like planning minute by minute to make sure he can do it all, that he can be at every single game and be at every drop off in the morning for my kids and make sure he's on every trip. Like there's really not much that I feel like you missed. The only other thing that you missed that was when you went to the White House. We had like the final.
Oh yeah.
We had it was like the playoffs of our spring league.
No, it was the summer league. I'll finish this because this is awful. So I'm the coach of the summer league team, and we're in the playoffs. We got invited, Kathy, my wife, and I, to the White House. Now, we had already been to the White House 2 other times. I don't care how dropping names this is, but President George W. Bush used to own the Rangers when I covered the team there.
Right.
So we were like friends. So this is the third time we've been invited to the White House, but it's the same night as our playoff game. So I look at your mother and I say, well, we're not going to the White House. I have a playoff game. She goes, what are you, crazy? It's a summer league girls basketball game. We're going to the White House. So I lose that argument, which I do every single time with Kathy Kurkjian. So that's what I missed. And I get a text like in the middle of dinner. We lost by 2.
Yeah.
So I missed a playoff game. And I told the kids, look, if you're going to play basketball, you have to commit to the team even during the summer. And then the coach didn't show up for the first game of the playoffs, and we lost by 2.
Well, he ended up on a radio show that week being like, okay, guys, what do I do? Do I go to the White House or do I go to this basketball game? And like tons of people called in, like every guy was like, what are you talking about? You have to go to the game. You're committed. And every like mom and female called in being like, are you nuts? Like you need to go to the White House. What are you doing? And so they like made it this whole big thing the week of the game, but we unfortunately lost. But you got to go to the White House.
Right.
So
And the kicker was Kenny Chesney played at the White House that night. So I got to meet Kenny Chesney, and we're going through the line in order to shake his hand. And to my astonishment, he's a huge baseball fan. He knows exactly who I am. And he says, if you ever want tickets to one of my concerts, you let me know. And as fate would have it, we take Kelly to Syracuse for her freshman year. We're dropping her off at college. And the night before, Kenny Chesney is playing at Syracuse.
Oh
And
my
he got us free tickets for right in the front. And we watched the Kenny Chesney concert, one of 3 concerts I've ever been to. And we did it the night before we dropped off. So maybe the lesson is I was supposed to go to the White House that night in order to meet Kenny Chesney and not miss the game.
yeah, it worked out
There you go.
just fine.
Everything happens for a reason, as I like to say.
Yeah.
So Kelly, what do you think is the best piece of advice you've ever received from your dad?
He was like, Kelly, they're not going to ask you any questions. You don't get to I should have considered something like this. The best piece of advice I would say is just try really hard. Like that's kind of the motto that dad in life has always instilled in me. It's like, if you try really hard at being a parent, you're going to be a great parent. If you just try really hard at doing the best job that you can at your job, you're going to be great. If you try to be a good human being, you're going to be great. So you just try your very best at everything that you can possibly do. And then that's the best that you can do. So that's always been something that I've really leaned on, is if I just give it my best go and try my very best, then I'm doing the best that I can.
Yeah.
By the way, we've got as our conversation has gone on, there's another connection that we share with you guys, and that is Jill's mom, my wife, is also a Syracuse grad.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is freaky.
I know.
It's really freaky, the connections here. Yeah.
And Kelly's brother, Jeffrey, who I do the podcast with, he
Is
went
also
to
Syracuse.
also. So we made many trips to Syracuse over the years. Jeffrey, if you don't know, a little off the topic here, was Otto the Orange for 4
really?
years
Yes.
at
gosh.
Syracuse. He was the mascot. I spent $50,000 a year to send him to college, and he ran around in a little red-orange outfit like every night. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And
this is off. We'll talk about Jefferson because this is just so funny. When you're the mascot, you're a D1 athlete. I don't know if you guys knew that, but you get access to all the facility that all the D1 athletes did. And at the time when we were in college, our basketball team was like so good. We won the national. No, we didn't. We were like in the Final Four
every year.
Yeah,
We were
yeah.
so good. It was such a fun time to be in the basketball world, but he was like in the gym with like all these guys who were like so talented. And like, one year he tore his hamstring, like doing a trick, and he had to like be in the ice bath with the other people who were like getting, help that day. And the guy next to him turns to him and was like, you like, what team are you on? And Jeffrey can't tell people that he's the mascot. You're not, he's like, oh, I'm on the soccer team. And he's like, I'm on the soccer team. Like, no, you're not. So he kind of had to tell him like, but then, being the mascot too, we would be at all the games, and I would go to every single game with my girlfriends or my husband, and Otto would always come and find us in the stadium, like in the stands. Otto came to find me every single game because it's Jeffrey. And my friends were always like, this is crazy. We've met Otto so many times. Oh my gosh. And half the time they're like, I wonder if it's like some weird old guy who's just like following us all the time. And I'm like cracking up because it's my brother, but I can't tell them. And then finally, when me and my friends graduated, Jeffrey was still there. I got to tell them all. And everybody thought it was just an absolute riot. And then when he graduated, you get to walk across the
Yeah.
what is it, the stadium or whatever, wearing the mascot hands. So that's you announcing to everybody, like, I was the mascot.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very fun.
And Kathy and I would go to games, and Jeffrey would find us and come talk to us. And like people in the stands are sitting next to us, we don't even know. They go, can't believe Otto came up here. And eventually my wife had to whisper, that's our son in the Otto costume.
Yeah, I remember when I was touring Syracuse that they mentioned that it was a deep-rooted secret. You couldn't tell anyone that you were the mascot, and then once you graduated, you got to announce that you were the mascot. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and we know Central New York very well because
Yeah.
Jill went to Ithaca.
Yep.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nice.
yeah,
Almost went to Syracuse, but
yeah.
didn't.
It was a neck and neck
Yes,
decision, right? Yeah,
last-minute
yeah,
decision.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
still upstate New York. So
Yes.
I went to Syracuse a little bit and visited there for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
It's very clear that you guys are very close and have such an open communication, open and communicative relationship. But would you say, Kelly, that you've ever been embarrassed by your dad? I mean, I feel like I don't get the vibe that you get easily embarrassed much,
Yeah.
but is there any specific memory where you can share with us?
I would say when I was younger, I would get embarrassed a lot. And as I've gotten older and just settled into like who I am as a human, I'm seeing the tendencies of like me doing these things now that like I have a husband and I have children. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I'm doing the same things like my dad did when I was growing up. And I hated this, but it's actually hysterical. Like it's fun to not care. It's
Yep.
fun to just be like funny and goofy and like me and my brother and my dad are very much all the same. And my mom is like, guys, you guys stop. Like, I cannot with you guys. But when we were growing up, oh my God, I was like horrified by it all the time. He would do stuff all the time. Like, you'll probably remember a million stories, but one, like, they're stupid. You're probably not even gonna think they're funny, but they were just weird in the moment. Like, he bought us all a pair of Chucks, and we went to like Outback Steakhouse for dinner. And the waitress did not care about us or about working there or whatever. And dad like had to announce to this lady, hey, like my family's all here. We can't wait to eat here. And we're all wearing our matching Chucks. We all just got Chucks. We're all wearing them. Everyone show her your Chucks. We just got them. And we're like, what are you doing? Like, why? And just like little things like that were like silly and goofy. And looking back, I'm like, it's just funny. Like, this is not embarrassing.
Yeah, and I embarrassed her so many times, and she got over it. But like, for instance, Lori Volland, one of our family friends, came to a 40-year birthday party or something. It was a big deal at our house, and I get to tell Lori how good a basketball player.
Okay, I'm like 10.
Right. And
11.
I say to Kelly, show Laura your crossover. She's in a dress, and I'm asking her to show her crossover dribble to an adult. And she looked at me like mortified. I can't believe that you just asked me to do that.
Yep.
Yeah, he would do stuff like that all the time. But now I'm starting to do those things.
It's a fact of life. You become your parents,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would be very happy if I grew up and became like him. So
yeah, I guess going to a restaurant, all wearing your Chuck Taylors, one might say it's a little quirky. Speaking of quirky, I think I've got what I'll call a quirky morning ritual.
I don't think it's quirky. I think it's common.
Well,
but...
and it's become sadly somewhat obsessive. I have to start my day now doing all of the New York Times word puzzles. So I start with the spelling bee, I move on to Wordle, and then go to Strands, and then move on to the Athletic Sports Connection. And then I finish it up with, it's not the New York Times, but it's the Baseball Immaculate Grid. So with that said, Tim, one, what is your morning ritual? And then, assuming you do the Immaculate Grid, do you get a perfect 9 every time?
All right. First off, my day always starts with a Diet Mountain Dew because I'm the only adult sports writer who doesn't drink coffee, which is it's so unhealthy, but it tastes so good. So every day has to start with the box scores. But when there are no box scores in the off season, I always start with Wordle, and then I do waffle, and that's the first thing I do every morning. Now, I have to be careful how I present this. I don't do the Immaculate Grid.
Okay.
Because to me, that would be work. Okay. I've acknowledged this. I only know three things in the whole world: baseball, basketball, and sitcoms from the 60s. If I did the Immaculate Grid and I lost, or I failed, I would kill myself. So the pressure is enormous that this is the only thing I'm supposed to be good at, these arcane baseball statistics. If I get them wrong, I would say, well, what's the point? This is the only thing I know, and I got it wrong. So I do it because the pressure is overwhelming on me. So I've chosen not to do it.
Well, I will tell you this morning, I got a 9.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm really happy. Now, I got to ask you, what is your favorite 60s sitcom?
Oh, Get Smart is the greatest sitcom of all time. And when I went to Cooperstown one year with my son Jeffrey, I brought all my tapes because I got every tape of of Get Smart. So we watched them on the way up and back. So now he's seen them all. But when Kelly was in, I want to say the fourth grade, the bus used to arrive at 8:20. And Get Smart was on at 8 o'clock every morning. So from 8 till 8:15, we watched Get Smart every morning, and then we would walk up to the bus stop. So my favorite sitcom is my dad's favorite, my two brothers' favorite, and now I have told my children,
Yeah.
you need to watch this, and they have.
We've seen so much of that.
Yeah.
Don Adams, a classic,
Yes,
a
of
classic.
course.
Yeah.
What's your favorite?
My favorite. That's a
Yeah.
good question. 60s. Well, I go back to the 50s. I mean, I go back to Ozzie and Harry. I go way back to stuff like people are not even going to know what this is. The Stu Irwin show.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. I mean,
Yeah.
so we're going back. But probably my favorite, in fact, there was a quiz the other day online asked, what was your favorite show as a kid? And without a doubt, my immediate response was Sky King.
Oh boy.
Yeah. From out
Sky
of the
King
western sky
was,
comes
was a
Sky King.
Sky King. I
Yeah,
watched that religiously when I was
right.
a kid.
Sponsored
What
by
happens when you're 68 years old, Jill? These
right.
things are embedded in your mind. You can't ever get them out.
Right. And
Yep.
the other thing
Yep.
about Sky King that I can't forget, Tim, sponsored by Nabisco with the orb and cross. That was the logo. Who remembers crap like that? But me.
You.
Old men, clueless old
Right.
men remember
Old
things like
men.
this.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
that's my greatest curse in life, my memory. It's the greatest. I have a great memory. I never forget anything. That's also my curse is that I don't forget anything.
Yeah.
And they're just in there for the rest of my life, whether I like it or not.
Quick
You and
story
me
about
both.
not forgetting anything.
Yeah.
Back to basketball very briefly. Dad's memory is unbelievable, where he will recall games like today's March 20th or something. We didn't play basketball at this time, but like January 5, he's like, this year in 2007, you guys played Richard Montgomery and you scored 15 and Veronica had 4 and Jessica. He like remembers the game, the date, who you played, how many points you scored. And it's like an unbelievable brain. So when everybody's like, wow, you recall so much about baseball, you just know all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, but he can recall dates of basketball games from his daughter that were like totally meaningless, and he'll remember all the stats and everything on it.
It
It's
wasn't
fascinating.
meaningless, and it's called, as we know, selective retention. We remember what we're interested in. When I go out with Kathy to somebody's house, she says, what do you think of the chandelier in the dining room? I don't even remember the dining room, let alone the chandelier. Kelly's senior year, I made a tape of her senior year set to music sung by the Fray, She Is. And I remembered all of her best plays, her best shots, her best passes, her best everything that she did her senior year. And I put it into a 4-minute video that I gave to her as a surprise present. And not long ago, Carson, her 4-year-old, my beautiful grandson, I showed him mommy's basketball tape from high school, and he was mesmerized that mommy used to play basketball, and now he'll still say mommy was really good. So that's what I did for her senior year. Everyone else buys your daughter a car or something. I gave her a tape of all of the highlights from her senior year.
So this video is on a DVD because it was made in like the 2000s, and we only have it on a DVD. And I think you have like 2 copies. And now like no one has a DVD player anymore, right? So like
In the
it's
world, no
really
one has a
Right.
DVD
No.
player.
Yep.
can't buy one. And so we bought them and they like don't work, but all for this video. And so dad's TV that he has at home, the only one that it works on is one of those massive clunky square TVs. And the only reason why that it is in the closet of his office or something is so he can pull it out, plug it in, play the video. And then he just puts it away when he's done. That's the only reason why we have this giant clunky TV. So we've talked about like needing to digitize this for him and get it on his computer.
Yep.
So we don't need a DVD player anymore, but in time.
Yeah.
In time.
Yeah. I mean, as you previously mentioned, you'll pass down your favorite TV sitcom. So is there anything, Kelly, that you've taken from your dad that you are passing down to your own children or plan to in the future?
Probably just the idea of like empathy and taking care of people. Like I said earlier, he is just the absolute king of making sure everyone is comfortable, everyone is happy. What can he do to help? And so my son has really started to show a lot of empathy for other people and making sure that if someone's not okay, like let's go take care of them. Let's make sure that if they're sad, what can we do? Like, and then also trying to think of others where he's like, oh, I'm going to make this for another person and that will make them smile. So kind of just teaching them like, what we can do for other people to make them happy or make them smile, make something easier on somebody, that's what I've taken the most from him that I'm hoping to also send down the line here. Just taking care of people.
Yeah.
He was like the ultimate. I mean, he took care of his mom, he took care of his brother. So like looking at that and like in my life, what we're supposed to do here is take care of our family. And so I will teach my children the same thing. So
Beautiful. Nope.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Tim, you're known and famous for a lot of things, and one of them, and in fact, I recently saw from one of the episodes of the podcast you do with your son Jeff, putting together what I'll call these baseball teams, but with a specific theme. So I recently saw the one that you did where each one of the players' last names was a car. Right. So what I have done to honor you, Tim, but more importantly to honor our daughters, I have put together my all-girls first name Major League Baseball team. So it's going to be a girl's first name and the player's last name. So here we go. You ready?
Oh, he's so
All
happy.
right.
How many people I've corrupted with my ridiculous thoughts? Go
All
ahead.
right. So here we go. Here we go. All right.
Just make
At
sure you
first
don't
base,
scream.
at
Okay.
first base, I've got Lee May. All right.
Yes.
Second base, who else? Pete Rose.
Yes.
Right? Now, the shortstop, and I had to dig for this one, the great Willie Miranda.
Miranda.
Played shortstop for the Yankees and a bunch of other teams during the 50s. Now,
Right.
talking about digging deep, Tim, ready for this one? At third base, I've got Nick Polly. Nick Polly played for the 37 Dodgers and the 45 Red Sox, right? In left field, Roberto Kelly.
Hey.
Center field, Fred Lynn.
Yes.
There can only be one right fielder, and that is Babe Ruth.
Ruth.
In fact, my mom's first name. All right. Behind the plate, I've got Clint Courtney.
Oh,
All right. My DH is Jamie Carroll.
right.
All right. My pinch hitter, and this is an homage to my daughter. This is her middle name, Joe Morgan. All right. My starting pitcher, Bob Shirley. My reliever, Larry Sherry. And to honor your daughter, my manager is Bill Joyce. From the 1896 to 1898 New York Giants.
There we go.
How long did it take you to come up with that list? Because believe me, it takes me forever to come up with the all St. Patrick's Day team, which I came up with yesterday. And today I've got the all March Madness team, or there's some real stretching going on.
Right.
How long did it take you to do that?
Well, I let me ask, how do you go about doing yours? Then I'll tell you how I went about doing mine.
All right. Well,
Do you just go into your memory bank, or do you actually do research?
Well, I do research. So I
Okay.
think like for St. Patrick's Day, I put into my computer, I Googled famous St. Patrick's Day happenings. Okay.
Okay.
So beer. So there's a guy named Seth Beer who played in the major leagues. Gary Green is the shortstop. So what I do
Okay.
is I get the famous names and then
Right.
usually they just jump out at you like, well, I know a big leaguer with this name. But sometimes you'll look and find one. Like I did the all country team last year, and who knew? I typed in Poland, and there was a catcher named Hugh Poland who played in the 30s. I had no idea.
There
So
you
this
go.
is one of those. So I have one of these encyclopedias on my laptop, so you can punch in a name and see if anything comes back. When I found Hugh Poland, it was like the greatest day, other than when Kelly was born, that there was an actual player named Hugh Poland who played in the major leagues because I didn't have a catcher who had the last name of a country.
There you go.
Yeah. So my best friend in doing this was Google. I just put in list, for example, every shortstop who ever played in the major leagues.
Mhm.
And I just went down the list until I found,
Wow.
yeah,
That's a lot of work. I'm
yeah,
proud of you for doing that.
yeah.
So
And it was my pleasure.
And
Like
I
I
didn't
said,
know he was doing
yeah,
this.
she didn't know that. So listen, we've now come to a point in the podcast that we call rapid fire roundup. It's a quick little game. What we're going to do is in alternating fashion, we're going to give you guys either quick questions, choices. We don't want you to do a lot of thinking, spontaneous answers. Tim, I've got the first one for you. So we're going to start with a little baseball flavor. And this first one starts with a Tim. So Tim, Timothy Busfield in Field of Dreams or Carl Malden in Fear Strikes Out.
all right, Timothy Busfield, because Field of Dreams is my favorite movie of all time. Not my favorite baseball movie, my favorite movie, period.
Yep.
Okay.
It's one of his top favorite movies as
Yeah.
well.
Yep.
Kelly, your favorite all-time baseball movie?
Probably Field of Dreams also, but I loved A League of Their Own, and Fever Pitch hit me at a time that was like super important. It was like just the right time for me. I was probably like low teens, and I loved every second of it. It's not the best movie I've ever seen, but I loved it.
Yeah.
So Field of Dreams, Fever Pitch.
Yep. Oh, I took yours.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Tim, other than ones you've written, your all-time favorite baseball book, nonfiction or fiction?
My all-time favorite baseball book is Ball 4, written by Jim Bouton when I was a kid, and it was so detailed and it gave you such a good look at the inside part of baseball. That's my favorite book ever.
Tim, I'll give you a quick little Boughton anecdote. One of my greatest pleasures when I was doing the PA announcing for the Jackals, he and his dad, George, formed the battery for the ceremonial first pitch at a Jackals game. In fact, I think they did it on two occasions. Yeah.
He threw out the first ball to his dad.
Yeah.
Oh,
George Boughton. Yep. Yeah.
makes me cry. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Kelly, what is one thing you know about your dad that his fans would be surprised to learn?
Every Wednesday growing up, he would make chocolate chip pancakes with powdered sugar on them. So
Yum.
I would say like the chef comment of he cooks every dinner, he cooks every breakfast. He's the chef.
I
Okay.
think that's the one thing you don't have in common.
Let's be clear. I'm not very good. We pray after we eat at my house. Trust me.
Okay. Speaking of eating, Tim, if you were stranded on an island, what is the one food you'd have difficulty eating, even if your life depended on it?
I'm the least picky eater on earth, but I had an oyster, a raw oyster one night, and that was ridiculously terrible. The consistency I just couldn't take it. I swallowed one and said, I will never do that again.
Yeah.
So there are probably going to be oysters on the desert island,
dead.
and I'm still not going to eat them because it was disgusting. And I eat everything.
All right, Kelly, when Hollywood makes the Tim Kurkjian story, who plays your dad?
Oh, obviously. Steve Carell.
Ooh,
Steve
good one.
Carell, I think, has the most perfect, like, goofy personality that very much matches dad. They actually look a lot alike. What was the joke somebody said?
Someone on Twitter wrote that Steve Carell is going to look like Tim Kurkjian when Steve Carell gets really, really old. I looked it up. I'm only 3 years older than him. But people say when Steve Carell is like 100, that's what he's going to look like, what Tim Kurkjian looks like right now.
But I think they have a similar like demeanor and like personality and kind of like how they tell jokes, and it's stupid, and you know, Michael Scott's my favorite person on the planet, and this is a lot of that too. So there you go.
Yep. Perfect. All right. And Tim, who plays Kelly?
Boy, I've never been asked that before. Kelly looks like, I'm going to say Kelly looks a tiny bit like Patty Duke, which only your dad will recognize.
Yeah.
Patty Duke had a twin sister in the TV show back then. So
The
I'm
Patty
going to say
Duke show,
Kelly
right?
looks a little bit like Patty Duke.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go with that.
For an option, I would say like Anna Kendrick.
That's what I had him. I thought you were going to say that.
No.
You've said that before.
Well, Kelly's good friend Grace Wallerstadt looks exactly like Anna Kendrick. So I can't put Kelly in there because there's someone from our high school basketball team that looks exactly like her.
Jill, I'm glad you said that because that's the one that I had in my brain too.
Well,
Okay.
this girl from my high school, we had like superlatives, and she got most likely to look like a female celebrity, and it was Anna Kendrick, and she went to her book signing.
Oh, she could be her twin.
Yeah.
Yeah. No
very
doubt about
similar
it.
as well. Yeah. So Anna looks like a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kelly, what is the one activity you've never done with your dad that you'd like to do?
Oh gosh. Travel? Actually, I don't want to travel with you because you don't like to do
No,
that stuff.
tell them about the Admirals Club.
Ooh, okay. I just did this. So this is one I have to just turn this around. We just did it. Dad's in the Admirals Club for the American Airlines. So I never get to travel with him one-on-one. So we did. I got to go to the Admirals Club. It was the coolest thing I've ever done. Like free wine, the food's amazing. I feel so bad for myself that I'm like eating in a normal airport when people are in the Admirals Club right next door. So that just happened. So I'll use that as my, I wish we could do that, but it just happened to us.
That's okay. That's a good one. Tim, if you were granted the power to bestow on yourself a world-class talent that you don't already have, what would it be?
I wish I could speak Spanish. I took French in high school and college. And now that Eric Gagne has retired, I don't have anyone to speak to in the major leagues. And yet 33% of the players in the big leagues speak Spanish, and I don't know a word of it. So 10 years ago, I said, I'm going to learn how to speak Spanish in the offseason. I lasted about 2 days and gave up. That would be the superpower I need, is to be able to speak Spanish now, because that would help me so much in my job, talk to all the Latino baseball players.
Well, here's another connection. My mom, Jill's grandmother, was, in fact, a Spanish teacher.
Wow.
All right, guys, we're coming over for dinner.
This is crazy. This is really crazy.
Yeah, but did you retain any of that?
No. See.
All right, Kelly, many years from now, at your dad's 100th birthday party, who do you book to sing happy birthday? And it can be someone dead or alive.
Who am I going to book? Okay, this is weird. I'm going to book Steve Martin to sing it. He's not a singer, but he's one of my dad's like favorite people in this whole wide world. And I think he would do like a really hysterical rendition of like happy birthday.
Some like Marilyn Monroe impression.
Yeah, like do whatever you want, Steve, with this, but you are my dad's favorite, and I think it would be very funny.
Yeah, senior year in college, we went to see Steve Martin at the Cellar Door in Washington, D.C. It held like 110 people, and it was half filled. Like 50 people went to see Steve Martin. He did the greatest routine because I'd seen him on the Johnny Carson show. And then he played at the University of Maryland a year later. And then he became so massively big. So I knew Steve Martin when he was a really young stand-up comedian, and I had a broken hand at the time, and I went up to him after the show and said, would you sign my cast? Because he was just there by himself. So he wrote on my cast, Tim, pay me the money or I'll break the other one. That's what Steve Martin signed on my cast.
Very Steve Martin scripture.
Yeah. Tim, are you a dog person or a cat person?
Oh, I'm a dog person. I had a dog all my life. We've lost both of our dogs in the last year. Kelly has cats here. She's a dog person first, but she has cats. Cats have lived in my house. I take care of her cats once in a while. I'm not very good with them, but I've grown to like cats much more because of Luna, and but definitely a dog guy first.
All
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Perfect. Kelly, the best thing about being Tim Kurkjian's daughter is blank.
Just getting to like, okay, two parts. Getting to see people and how much they love your dad and how much they admire him, aside from like me and my family, is a really, really cool thing. So, yes, sometimes it can be overwhelming to like, be out and people are stopping him and talking to him all the time, but it's very cool to see other people that you don't know admire your dad as much as you do.
Yeah,
I'd say.
at the All-Star game in Houston like 25 years ago, guy comes up to me. He's drunk in the parking lot. He spots me. Kelly is with me. My whole family's with me, and he goes, "Oh my God, it's Tim Kurkjian. I want to marry you." And Kelly says, "Dad, you're already married."
Very
She was
young.
5. She didn't understand. Right.
I would
Tim,
say the same thing.
Tim, this last one is for me, and that is, who is your favorite all-time baseball public address announcer?
Well, Bob Shepard is the greatest public address announcer ever. He did the Yankee games,
Yep.
and his voice was so regal. It was so elegant. And I've never done an impersonation in my life, but I can tell you that betting second for the Yankees, number 2, Derek Jeter,
Yep.
number 2.
There you
That
go.
is the worst impression ever. But
not
Bob
bad.
Shepard is the greatest public address man in the history of baseball.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Yep.
Wholeheartedly agree. We've come to the penultimate section of our podcast. We call it cross-examination. And why do we call it that? Because now we take the two of you off the hot seat and you get to ask questions of us. So the reason why it's cross-exam, Tim, you get to ask a question of Jill, Kelly, one of me, and you guys can decide who goes first.
All right, Jill, I'm going to ask you a repeat question. Give me something that your dad has embarrassed you with growing up that you will never forgive him for.
Well, see, the thing is, it happens every day.
That's good.
Unlike you, Kelly, I do get easily embarrassed, and I think it's because I just don't like being the center of attention. And the thing that my dad does to embarrass me makes us kind of the center of attention, which is, you know, love you, but his hearing's not the best.
Yeah.
His hearing's not the best, and he's got hearing aids at his ripe old age, and so unbeknownst to him, he'll talk a little bit louder than the average
bear, yeah.
person.
Yes.
And so he'll be on a phone call, or his hearing aids have a Bluetooth option, so he'll be like listening to Instagram reels or YouTube through the Bluetooth on his hearing aids, and so we'll go, Dad, my mom will go, George, and he'll come off and be like, what? What? And I'm like, this is why, like, and just be screaming on the phone, and I'm like, we gotta bring our inside
We're
voices
right
in.
here.
We're right here. Exactly. Exactly. So,
And the sad thing is,
Yeah.
it's not going to get any better.
no, it'll just get worse, and I'll get more embarrassed. No, but I think that one is an almost everyday occurrence, probably.
Yeah.
I feel you, Jill. My mom's the same way. She's had hearing aids for most of my life, and we'll like be sitting right here. I'm like, Mom,
I'm standing right here.
and then she'll like hear something. She's like, what, honey? I'm like, Mom, I've been trying to like nicely talk to you, and I have to raise my voice, and then you're mad at me because I yelled at you.
Yeah,
I totally.
exactly. Yeah. Becomes a little bit of a screaming match there, but
Yeah. Yeah,
I would say that.
Okay, Kelly, give me your best shot.
Okay, George, tell me about your fate. Like, obviously, we bonded the most in life over basketball. How about you guys? What was like the highlight for you and Jill in your life watching her grow up? Something that you guys got to share together?
Well, obviously, now having done this podcast for 2.5 years, that's been a tremendously rewarding bonding experience.
Cop out.
No, but I will also say, Tim, just as much as you enjoyed watching Kelly play basketball, that's the same joy and delight that I got from watching Jill play softball. And yeah, admittedly, she was not the best fielder, didn't have the greatest arm,
Or
but man,
legs.
she could roll at it. Like I said earlier, she could roll out of bed. Her eye hand is unbelievable. And I remember going to a game where she hit a ball, didn't hit over the fence, but she
Was
got a
this?
triple. Now,
Yeah.
for somebody who is speed deprived, for her to have having hit a triple, yeah, you can imagine how far she had to hit that ball. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that was without a doubt that was one of another moment. This was not a sports moment at all. She's in when was the talent show?
Oh, like fourth or fifth grade.
Fourth or fifth grade, there was a school talent show. I don't know. There must have been 40 or 50 acts in this show.
Oh.
Jill is all of 10 years old. And she comes out on stage. There must have been 300 or 400 people in the audience. To this day, I still can't believe she actually did this. She sang a song. I don't know if either one of you or if you are familiar with it. It was
Taylor
popularized by
Kristen
Kristen
Chenoweth.
Chenoweth.
Yep.
It's called Taylor the Latte Boy.
Okay, no. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had seen it. She was going to a performing arts camp, and I saw a young woman in the camp sing it, and I just fell in love with the song, particularly the way this woman performed it. And then I went on and I saw Chris and Jill gets up on this stage, and I got to tell you, got to use a baseball metaphor. She hit it out of the park. It was unbelievable, amazing. 10 years old, and parents whose kids who are really artistically gifted after the show said, I got to tell you, your kid, she was it. She was the bomb. She blew everybody else away. So yeah,
That's amazing.
that was an
So
incredible moment. That was an incredible moment.
Yeah.
Jill, do you still sing?
In the car.
By myself.
Car, in
Yeah.
the shower, Yeah, no, I was a big musical theater kid. Went to performing arts sleepaway camp, did all the things. So yeah, have like my artistic side like you, and also my athletic sports side as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit of both. But no, I quit musical theater when I was in middle school, probably from the fear of auditioning. So
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah.
Something happens in that time frame because that happened to me too. And I think part of it was like my little brother is unbelievably talented when it comes to like getting up. And he was the musical theater kid all through high school, college, can sing so well, so talented. But something happens in that, like after, like in the middle of middle school, and like that's when we all get so embarrassed of our dads, when we're scared to have anybody like
Yep.
look at me and be like, oh, that's not very good, whatever. So like it's such a weird, hard time for girls to make a transition. You're either gonna like jump in and do it, or you're gonna like not at all and just back out. And I don't want to be
Yep.
up on stage. I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want anyone looking at me. And it's sad, you know, that
I know.
it's a
I
hard
think
time.
I think it's puberty, the puberty hits and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't
Yeah.
want to do this anymore. Yeah. So before we officially let you go, please let our listeners know where they can find you, follow you, any upcoming endeavors you have going on in your life. Please divulge.
All right. Well, what we're doing now is the podcast. Is this a great game or what? We do it now 2 days a week with my son. That is our big thing these days. I still work, of course, at ESPN. I do games on TV. I do games on the radio. I write all the time. And I do baseball tonight every Sunday. That's where you can find me. But mostly, you're going to find me at Kelly's house because every day now, since both kids are in school, Emma is going to be 2 any day. She has just started school. Carson is in the same school. So my job these days, beyond other things, is to pick up Emma every day at 12:30 and pick up Carson every day at 3 and deliver them home. So Kelly, who's trying to work a full-time job, can have an extra half an hour to an hour a day where she doesn't have to go pick up the children. And I have the privilege of picking up the kids. I don't care how corny it sounds. When they run into your arms at school, like you rescued them, you're going to take them home. it's a highlight of every day for me.
I actually can't believe we didn't, and we don't need to dive into it, but dive into like him being a grandpa. He is Pop Pop. This is his like third life now of, this next huge chapters. He is Pop Pop. That's what everybody calls him now. And so for the first 2.5 months of this year, he took my daughter Emma like full time from 8 to 12:30 because it's the off season. He didn't have work to do, and I have a job that I'm trying to do over here while also just managing the kids. And he took her like every day, every morning until nap time, and had done that with my son a whole bunch, and takes them in the afternoons and takes them on sleepovers at his house with my mom. So this next phase of life is truly, you can find him as Pop Pop.
Perfect.
Okay. Now, before we let you guys go, it would be terrible of me not to give your son Jeff, Tim, and your brother Kelly credit, because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be with you guys today. So I want to give a big shout out to Jeff for making this happen. And when I reached out to him, I told Jeff that I had a story, Tim, that I had to tell you. I'm a huge San Francisco Giants fan. Lifelong fan. Even though I grew up in Jersey, yeah, big fan. I fell in love with Willie Mays when I was a young kid, and that was it for me. So in 1987, I went to the Giants fantasy camp in Tempe, Arizona, as I like to say, with the exception of my honeymoon, the best week of my life, right? Yep. And here I am. We're in Diablo Stadium, I think on the camp, Arizona State, I think that they play there. At the time, it was the Seattle Mariners training facility. And I'm playing a game in the main stadium at first base, and I see coming down the steps of the stadium from the third base side, Orlando Cepeda. And his eyes are riveted on me. I mean, laser focused. And the third out is made. I'm starting to run over to the third base dugout, and he is coming directly at me. And he puts his hands up to it, like, stop. And he's saying, Jewel. Yes, sir. He said, I'm coming down the stairs and I'm looking at you, and my first thought is, what is Jack Clark doing here? And then as I get closer to you, I say to myself, that's not Jack, it's his brother. Now, the funny thing about the story is, for years, my dad always said to me, you are a dead ringer for Jack Clark. And Tim, what I had to do, and I don't know if you guys can see this, I had put together here's my scrapbook, and there's a picture of me. I don't know if you can see it.
I can.
Okay. Jill, can you help me out here?
Yep.
There you go. There's a picture of me in my Giants uniform. And so that's why Orlando, Cha-Cha, the baby bull, thought I was Jack Clark.
Real quickly, I grew up in Bethesda, Maryland, and I was the biggest San Francisco Giants fan ever. Willie Mays, 3,000 miles away from San Francisco. It was an unhealthy obsession with the Giants because of Willie Mays. Yep. And I actually joined the Giants fan club when I was in college. And only a few years later, I'm covering the major leagues, and I meet Nick Peters, who covers the Giants back then. And I told him that I was a member of the Giants fan club living in Maryland. And he goes, oh, you were that guy. I was the only one in the Giants fan club from like out of the state of California. And true story, Jack Clark in 1978 was the best player in the game as far as I was concerned. He was my baseball hero. And when they traded him to the Cardinals for David Green, I absolutely stopped loving the Giants. Wow. I was covering Major League Baseball, so you're not allowed to root for anybody. But Jack Clark was my favorite player on the Giants, and you look like him. That's unbelievable.
All right, it's settled, you guys. We'll be at your house next week, Thursday, for dinner. We're clearly supposed to be best friends, so yeah.
You're welcome.
Whatever, the door will always be wide open for the two of you.
We can give you a tour of our studio.
Willie was my guy. Tim will always be my guy. But at the camp, Tito Fuentes was my manager. Tito was my manager.
Right. Yeah. Tito Fuentes, number 23, born on my brother's birthday. Wow. And I run into Tito here and there. And I grew up watching him play. And whenever I tell him, hey, I saw you play, he's still like astonished. How does anyone remember me after all these years?
Well, you can do me a favor then. The next time you run into Tito, please tell. He's not going to remember me, of course,
Right.
but please give him my warmest regards. So
I will.
listen, Tim Kurkjian and Kelly Kurkjian, thanks for giving us a talk to go with lots of hits, ton of runs, and absolutely no errors. You guys hit it out of the park. So
Oh,
thank
thank
you.
you.